You're live. I'm live. Okay. Well, can I fix my hair slightly? Wait for I can't see which direction the camera is. So yeah, kind of an odd video where I'm not wearing, the logo stuff. I've seen videos where guys do wear logo stuff, and then it isn't necessarily anything to do with what they're talking about. So it's just there. It's just incongruous. So I guess we have kind of three main points to make here. Like one is how to more properly put together kind of heritage, vintage, retro-ish outfit. And again, budget being maybe a thing. And then, of course, seasonality, baseball being considered primarily a summer, the boys of summer, yes. And so, once again, the problem with summer being that a lot of stuff that's fashionable or whatever is just too hot to wear and enjoy in summer. So you're wearing a t-shirt and shorts instead of, some full outfit. There are, well, we'll get into that in a minute. And I don't know, the third thing, not really, well, I guess the third thing being kind of more an extension of the previous thing about, how do you mix sportswear with regular casual wear, I guess, along those lines being what's most commonly done. But the reason I chose Americana, well, obviously baseball being this old sport, old by, today's standards or whatever, or classic sport, a sport that has a lot of eras that you can draw from, where some things change and some things stay the same, right? Obviously, in the late 60s, thereabouts, or the early 70s, we have that shift from natural fabrics to polyester uniforms and how that will play a big part. Also, we go from more traditional generic clothing to more stylized, printed t-shirts and that kind of thing. Like, you didn't really have a lot of that in the 60s. Like, people were still wearing a tie and a jacket to a baseball game, until maybe even the early 70s, right? If you're going to the bleachers, then you're going to have, the working class more, as opposed to down in the expensive in the box seats and all that. So yeah, the guys up here are maybe wearing the dungarees and the flannel shirts, and maybe a ball cap. Like in those days, you didn't have so much fans who were trying to dress like the players and the name jerseys and the signed jerseys and all that kind of thing. That of course became super collectible and super expensive and blah blah. And you don't usually wear those to the game though, right? When I was young, before I was even in Little League, like, I loved baseball, or the idea of baseball. I didn't really understand the rules of the game so much, or why, like, this pitcher was gone all of a sudden. Like, where'd he go? Like, those nuances were, and I don't even think I could watch an entire baseball game and focus and keep track of the score. It was just on the TV because, you only had so many channels in those days, and Channel 5 was probably showing the Dodgers, and Vin Scully was always there. You can be well older than me or well younger than me and know who Vin Scully is, right? And of course, the quality of the things that I had in those days. Well, this is not an actual baseball hat. It's not a team hat, but this will come back in, like I said, part of topic 3, where it's not an actual baseball team, but it's made to look like it. But what I'm talking about though is this plastic thing, right? Almost no hats come with this anymore. thankfully, right, we're glad that Velcro and other fixtures like this one I've had for a while, and I'll still wear it this autumn. But I want to get rid of it because of this, or one of these days take it to a tailor and have her, attach something that's nicer than this. But when you're, 6 or 10 or whatever, this is what you get, and they break. Now that I'm older, they don't break as much because I don't, wear the hat until it's falling apart as much. But okay, but obviously, like I said, Americana, like I said, that's going to be a big part of this, is like themes, recurrent themes, marketing gimmicks, for lack of a better word. I mean, this is made to look like a preppy, baseball-y hat, even though it's just advertising for a company, right? But nobody's going to know what company that is based on that. It looks like it could be Cincinnati or Columbus or any place with a C that might have a minor league team, right? It just is established 1961. So the fact that it's Cabela's is only if you know that this is the name of the company and not college, right? Like the John Belushi sweater. So there's a kind of a gray area, and now most baseball teams traditionally don't deal in muted autumny colors because, again, summer, the World Series is in autumn, and that's like kind of a separate season, not quite as long as hockey playoffs, but more like a month and 3 months. But if we're trying to get, so, like I said, trying not to make this too scattered. But so if we're trying to get a good hat, let's just start with hats, because, like, again, even like in the old days, we saw it in movies, right? Stand By Me, Born on the 4th of July, where it's always a Yankees hat, right? The kid gets gifted a Yankees hat, either from Denny, the older brother, and it gets swiped, or the girl for his birthday gives Ronnie the real deal, Ronnie. That's the real deal. So even in the mid 60s, we already have this kind of nostalgia, or that was more like the early 60s or maybe even the late 50s. Not nostalgia, not so not much as much nostalgia there as much as I don't know, what's the word, admiration or whatever, desire to, like the real deal being, this is not the real deal. This is a Nike Velcro tab cotton Yankees hat, right? And like I said, we'll kind of get into that more. So again, just a tangent a bit, also not the real deal. A trucker hat with not baseball, but definitely Americana. If I wear this to a baseball game, nobody will be too upset if it's because it's not the wrong team, at least, right? I wouldn't have a problem if I wore this to the Dodgers, as opposed to, if you wore, yeah, right. But it's also, not a literal baseball hat. Again, a good summer hat, one that I, will probably wear next summer that I didn't really get around to it this summer. But, and maybe some minor league teams have mesh hats, I don't know. But major league teams, we typically have the wool ones. Like I said, we'll get into that. And then, like I said, this one is kind of gross, and I've showed it before in other videos. This is a hockey team, but it can also pass for like nautical or Americana, or what it says, Americans right on it, right? Also kind of has seen better days, and at least had not plastic fixture, but not a thing that ever held correctly to the head. So always needed some tape or some sewing to kind of keep it in place, and with some kind of metal things here, kind of. So there's a loose category called baseball caps, right? But again, here we got red, white, and blue, as opposed to black and yellow. Let's pick on the Pirates for a minute for no reason. Not all teams are necessarily. And then, of course, your counterpart, if you're hockey all the time. But this can be worn with this if it wants to look American. It like obviously I would have to take off this sticker and replace it with a with this kind of sticker to be American. I'm just saying that Canada has kind of a version of it that can be integrated, and hockey has. I'm gonna save this one for last. Hockey has adopted some similar stuff, so this looks like a national league type wool hat, except that it does have plastic because it's 20 years old. So if this had come out a year later, hopefully they would have replaced the plastic with a better fastener. But my point about this style of hat is it works better in winter than summer for most casual use. It's a little more structured. It's a little nicer, it's a much nicer wool fabric. But I think you're going to, sweat stains a lot more in this than a cotton one sooner. Well, cotton kind of, it shows the sweat more maybe, but your head's not as hot, I guess, is what, the bottom line. But so, other sports, football and hockey and whatnot, I guess we could do a separate video if I felt like it, maybe in the, a few months, about how they've borrowed from baseball style, maybe a bit for the casual wear, because obviously in the old days, goalies wore ball caps, and I don't know if anybody else did. So I guess there's kind of a connection there, but most other hockey apparel, apart from, obviously the sweater being a famous thing that evolves into, what we call the jersey, different than a baseball shirt, type of thing. So it has its own language there, but all the other kind of consumer fashion wear is hockey marketing came after baseball marketing, I'm pretty sure. Just to, a large extent. I'm willing to go on a limb. Like I said, we'll save that one. But so yeah, so what's happened, of course, lately, the whole Americana thing is, so these are what, three hats like that Rangers hat, right? So they're all wool. They're all, this one's fitted, which is more correct than this kind of thing, right? If you're trying to be more like the player on the field look, a fitted hat is more correct. But the way they sit on your head, the crown, that high crown, all that, they might not look as good casually than some of the cotton ones. So it's kind of a, but again, they will also look less grungy and beat up as fast, right? I mean, this one is definitely worn a lot, but you can't totally tell that. I mean, it needs to be dusted off and whatnot, but I can't say that it looks brand new, but you can't tell how old this hat actually is just by looking at it, as much as a really, again, something like this guy that's, showing his age, got a lot of, dirty, dingy stains and that kind of thing. How often do you want to replace your hat? Kind of a personal thing. Some of these, I just don't wear that often. So when I do wear them, I don't, I'm not necessarily wearing them somewhere where I'm worried about how it looks. So that's a separate discussion. But so my point, though, the classic logos, though, are usually kind of simple, not a lot of talking, pretty easy to follow. Again, the everybody's, love them or hate them, everybody knows what this logo means, right? And then, of course, not a fit or a sort of fitted one. I think it has kind of an elastic thing going on. Maybe not too much elastic, but also a cotton one. But yeah, not hard to figure out what that means, but also, okay, I've deviated slightly with the orange from, the red, white, and blue motif for that, because obviously the Golden Gate Bridge. And why the Mets have orange, I don't know, but they do. And so it throws things off a little bit if you wanted to wear this with like something with a red accent. It won't look quite right, whereas most clothes with orange don't look right at all. So it's a little harder with some teams to kind of make that, clean statement or whatever. But again, would you rather have this or this? Depends on the occasion, depends on the outfit. Like I said, if you're wearing something kind of more like this, traditionally, it would be more like this, right? But these days, and if I was wearing this, then something like that. Kind of a gray area. You could do either or. Now, another Tom Cruise movie, A Few Good Men, where he's out hitting baseballs and he's wearing a slightly different. This is kind of the 70s version of this with this angled and the ringer, and it's poly blend or mostly poly. Whereas if you spend a little bit extra, you might be able to find a cotton one. Where here we have the Henley buttons and the sleeves are separate from this kind of goofy, structure or whatever. So a little more of a classic look. I have a wool one of this that I got. The problem is I almost never wear it because it's too warm for summer, and it's kind of like the LL Bean version without the sleeves for winter, where you want the sleeves in winter, especially if you're layering. But the wool ones are just the same thing as these river driver shirts. So you could, if you didn't need it two-tone, because you were going to wear a jersey over this, you could always get this sleeve hemmed. And but basically it's two layers. You've got a cotton inner layer with these breathing holes, and then you've got the wool outer layer. And LL Bean sometimes offers them in cotton too, or some companies do. But if you're really, wanting that warm, I suppose you could wear the long sleeve one and play baseball in it if you're in a cool night or whatever. And nobody would necessarily think you were doing something completely, bizarre, because wearing sleeve shirts under baseball jerseys is kind of an established thing. And you could do that casually as well as, in your softball league or whatever. But and then here's a cotton San Francisco one. This one has the elastic, yeah, something like that. So it has no back, but a simple. But see, this one actually looks better with most outfits, like I said, than this one, because it's a little simpler, a little more low profile, not so chunky on your head, that kind of thing. But again, black and orange, not red, white, and blue or whatever. And so undershirts, I kind of went from hats to undershirts without any real transition, but it'll all make sense when you try. But this again is an outfit meant for on the field that you could wear casually, was kind of the point of that. Or if you're wearing a regular casual shirt, you could try and figure out which hat you would pair it with. But of course, if you're wearing it casually, again, you're not on the field. This would probably look better with a more casual hat than because now you're getting into the issue of the blue doesn't match and all that kind of thing. So if you're going casual, you're less worried about. I think this matches the Mets probably pretty close. Kind of either or. Another one of those things where I have problem with wool clothes like tweeds is getting the colors to all match. Um, Again, another hockey one, but with a kind of a simplistic design where if it didn't say hockey here and NHL here, you could assume this was Texas Rangers baseball, from a distance, or Rangers. It could be an Army hat for all but it's not a overly. It has words on it, but it's not too wild and hard to decipher. Like you can get the idea pretty quick that it's a sports thing, it's a hockey thing, it's simple, it's red, white, and blue, it's primary colors. So it's going to be a better look overall than something too. And the reason I wanted to show that one was because then right next to it I wanted to show this, which this is a really old one. I think Barry Bonds was still playing when this came out. But here we have, well, apart from the Nike logo, a very direct wood, the baseball bat, the logo that might appear on the bat stamped as it is, right? The team name, very simple, very direct, not primary colors. Again, we have black and orange because it's the Giants, but pretty for a casual t-shirt, an elegant design, not the ones you get at Walmart where there's just way too much going on. Now, when you're a child, what I was alluding to before, you kind of want everything. You want Godzilla with a baseball bat and a King Kong with the glove and the and fighter planes and every battleships and all this other junk that doesn't have anything to do with, because you just want the shirt to say everything that you can't say with words. Hopefully you grow out of that by the time you're 20 or so. Again, here's another kind of classic. This one can be nautical or just real baseball specific ish, but so I could wear this with dungarees and like a navy chambray shirt, and it wouldn't necessarily just scream baseball as much as it kind of screams, working guy or something. I don't know what exactly the correct phrase, but that's a different look than, like I was saying, from the polyester true jersey, right? And of course, this one I intentionally bought it with the big logo, rather than the home version. Because also I think the gray goes better with a pair of jeans most of the time than a white shirt. That I'm worried, it might show a stain or whatever. I had a Boston one of this that, like an idiot, I sold off a long time ago, for way less than it cost. But something like this, like I said, makes a statement. You can wear it with jeans, especially to the game, but then it's going to be a little harder to pair with normal outfits, because then if you wear this with this hat, it still mostly works, but then you lose that, official feeling of, I don't have the wool Dodgers hat, obviously, but the wool hat that the players would be wearing. So if you go to the game and you're trying to look like the players, then obviously you're going to want the better hat. But of course, then you're going to draw the line, because you're not going to wear the same trousers in the polyester that they're wearing. Why would you even buy those? Why would you go in costume like that to a game? Everybody will just think you look ridiculous. Of course, you're going to wear this with, jeans or blue chinos or something. Because that would, and you're not going to wear it with suit trousers ever, slacks or whatever. Because the polyester and wool would just look completely silly together. With this, though, you could still get away if you had to layer, with like maybe a Harrington jacket or a leather one. These are the kind of flight jackets with the side pocket flaps, and it's tucked in, but this has a button, not a snap, so you can't really see anything because of the buttonhole. And then of course it has the zipper in the collar and the lining, the kind of members only. Kind of stole the idea from these and ran with it for 10 years or whatever. And of course I have a khaki one here that might work with some items. I can't really tell anything when it's still in the bag, but I haven't really needed a jacket yet this summer, so we might be wearing that in another month or so. But of course, as I was saying earlier, you can get the more vintage kind of stuff. This will set you back maybe more than the polyester ones, but probably not by much if memory serves. But then you're going to look, again, wearing this casually, you're going to look maybe more stylish, but you're also going to draw immediate attention to yourself, because if you wear the polyester thing casually, most people will just be like, oh yeah, that's my team too, right? Whereas this, you're really, you're going the extra mile, right? And again, not going to look so great with the wrong hat. Going to be a little harder to match it. You could get away with this maybe because it's dark, but it's faded now. So if this was new, it might be a little darker. I'd hold up the Boston one, but then all the Yankees fans will have a conniption fit if I, hold the two logos in the same frame, right? I don't have every single logo here. I don't have Detroit. I don't have Cincinnati. I used to have Cincinnati, but didn't fit anymore. And I wish I had kept that hat just to keep it, because it was this style of hat, but with the all red, with just the white C, not the cluttered up junk that they've done since. And a lot of course, some of the classic logos have now been deemed culturally inappropriate or whatever by people who don't even watch baseball. So I don't know how many of those you can get that I used to own, like Cleveland and whatnot. And some of the newer logos, like, I don't know, Tampa and things, they're trying too much to be cartoony and artsy, and I'm much more familiar with the hockey ones than the some of the baseball ones, because I haven't even kept track of all the teams. And I think football teams have moved, and basketball, they're starting to get really bad. But anyway, to the Americana thing, because I was making a point. I mean, we're talking about, and we're on the subject, the most appropriate sneakers, yes or no, possibly, maybe. Again, kind of a childhood throwback thing, but this will look more correct with that Dodgers shirt than some other shoe footwear things we could name, right? But there's been a tradition, like I said, since the 60s for this kind of throwback nostalgia thing. I'm not making this up, because we have, rock bands like these guys who were trying to be country boy-ish, even though they were from the Bay Area. And we had, and they kind of really mined it. Here we are playing in a skiffle group with a jug band and a washboard and a, gut bucket and all that kind of thing, So, this kind of thing was already happening in the 60s. And then, of course, this album that didn't do very well, but has a couple of really good songs on it. Where, again, Fogerty in a cowboy hat and all that. And so they weren't necessarily fashionable, but they were definitely, doing this kind of oaky style or whatever. And what's that style all about? Plaid flannel and denim pants and maybe hats and boots, definitely boots. Of course, the Beatles kind of introduced, a stylish form of boot. And then by the end of the 60s, that style had kind of gone out of fashion and cowboy boots had come in. So then you had, Same thing. Here's a band from 1970 trying to look like it's 1932 or whatever, right? And you know, well, it's the Depression and we're waiting on the welfare line or whatever. And then of course the ultimate, well, their follow-up was, you know, this kind of wooden. So like I was saying about that Giants t-shirt, and to a lesser extent that Rangers hat, you know, we have this kind of wood grain thing. It's kind of hard to see, but this kind of wood grain thing, you know, blended with a you know, a logo and some lettering or whatever. So it's not like the marketing people who do baseball stuff are operating in a vacuum. You know, it's kind of chicken and egg, right? Because, you know, you have this kind of stuff that then gets borrowed, not directly, but you know what I mean, indirectly for that kind of stuff. But then what do we get in the mid 80s, right? I don't have this one on vinyl, but here's John Fogerty's album with a leather 1920s Babe Ruth glove, right? And here's the glove in, you know, without the red, white, and blue lettering, or red and blue and brown, I guess. And the lyrics are just printed. Yeah, I don't have, like I said, I don't have this one on vinyl, so it's kind of a subtle, you know, leather on dirt, brown on brown. So again, not super bright primary colors as much as the earthy thing. So like I said, we're kind of blending those two things. Like I said, something like going back to, you know, the first one. It's buried under several other heads. That kind of thing, or even that kind of thing. But then what do we get the same year or the previous year, somewhere around the same year? Was this 84? 85, I think. Anyway, yeah, 84. We've got Bruce Springsteen's distressed pocket with his white t-shirt and his red hat. Of course, we can't see any logo here. Excuse me, I'm getting hiccups. And he's got a cowboy belt, even though he lives in New Jersey, or maybe by this time he'd moved to LA. So a cowboy belt for a little bit of flair, but just with a white t-shirt. But of course, Bruce around this time, he's dressing like he's riding a motorcycle, right? He's got the denim vest over the leather jacket, and he's got the heavy black leather jacket that, you know, the greaser thing, which is not quite going to be the same look that's going to look good with this kind of stuff. With this kind of stuff, maybe a black leather jacket, but not with all the zippers. But typically, if we're going like more earthy, a brown leather jacket. But again, with the blue and all the blue and all the blue, maybe not even a leather jacket, maybe that. And then on a side tangent, you know, kind of the same thing. You know, other sports, we can get like the rugby shirts. But again, with a more simple design is going to, you know, work a little better. And of course, this one, like more like a true rugby shirt with the bumblebee thing going on. Definitely a classic look, but not an Americana look as much. Some a preppy look to a degree, but definitely a totally casual look. Again, not where we're blending like an Oxford shirt with a fitted hat or that kind of thing. If that makes sense. So kind of a gray area. So like, yeah, like, you know, the cowboy or the country boy look would be, you know, the baseball hat with the regular cowboy kind of clothes, but that's not necessarily stylish so much as just it's what you're wearing because it's what you're doing today. So if you're going out on the town, that's not a great look because that's the same thing you wore to work, pitching hay or driving your truck or whatever all day, or building a shed, or you know what I'm getting at. Like I said, the Creedence the Creedence thing, they're a rock band trying to look like they're going to do a job, but they're not actually going to do a job. They're going to play a show. So they're not riding any horses. They're not, roping any steers. They're not baling any hay, but their music has that kind of undercurrent to it, right? That, again, is this song really about baseball? No, it's a metaphor. He's talking about his musical career, but it's still in every single like baseball movie ever for a reason, because he talks about baseball extensively in the song, so it works. And then of course this one, Glory Days, if you don't get the connection with the guy talking about how good of a pitcher he used to be, so does Bruce have a monopoly on the thing? I don't know. He definitely put out one of the most iconic ones, and didn't use any dirty browns or sepias or anything. He just red, white, and blue, born in the USA. Okay, here we are. And so, yeah, like I said, if you kind of go, it doesn't have to be a t-shirt, and it doesn't even have to be jeans, but you can tie these elements together and it will make a statement, if that all makes sense from a really long-winded video. Okay, so I guess if there's any questions, put them in the comments, and I'm going to go get some lemonade because my throat is really dry now.